Hey, so today I thought I'd just show a couple things about reduce. So I'm using Quokka, which is this cool thing from Wallaby, the folks who make Wallaby. It'll just run the code that I type instantly. It's kind of neat. So yeah, I've got this fruit here, and I'm logging that fruit out. Now, what if I wanted to turn this fruit into an array here's a little tip. So what if I wanted to turn this, instead of an object, it was an array where the first, an array of arrays where the first element is the property and the second is how good it is. And so actually, you don't need to reduce for that. You can do object.entries on that fruit, and you're going to get that array of arrays, which is kind of handy. And the reason that I bring this up is because we can actually use object.entries with reduce. And this is normally how I like to use reduce on an object. So let's reduce this fruit object down to only the fruit that is good, okay? So we'll say object.entries fruit, and that's going to give us that array that we saw before. And then we'll say reduce, and the first well, you can see it right here. The first argument to reduce function, or to a reduce call, is a callback function that accepts the previous value, the current index, and the array. Normally, you only use the first two for this. So we're gonna, I call the first item not the previous value, but the accumulator. So I say ACC, or I could say like all fruit. Okay, hold on a second. Yep, this is a day in the life of Kent. Okay, anyway, yeah, so we're gonna call this all fruit, or let's see, we'll call it good fruit. Okay, and so that's our first argument to this callback. It's our accumulator. The second argument is going to be, okay, hold on, my kids are trying to test me, I think. There you go. Okay, yeah, this is the BBC dad. Yep. Oh, luckily, I'm not like pushing him away and whatever. Yeah, he's just excited. He's like, "Oh, dad." Okay, cool. So the second argument is going to be the current value. So it's going to be, we have this array of fruit items. We're going to have banana good, apple better, pear good, peach. Okay. The second item in this is going to be each item in the array on this iteration. So yeah, see, I'm breathing. I had to run up the stairs. So yeah, we'll call this fruit. But this is entry, so it's going to be an array. Let's actually destructure this. So it's going to be the fruit name and the quality, I guess we'll call that. And here, let's move this over, get a little bit more room, and I'm going to shrink that down. We can see that. So yeah, well, actually, here I can just format this a little bit better. Can't format this with prettier because it's an untitled thing. I don't save it. I don't get. Probably could format document. Yeah, see, and prettier is going to mess it up. Okay, so on each iteration of this reduce, we're going to actually get the previous value, but on the first iteration, that previous value doesn't actually exist because we haven't gone through it yet. So by default, what reduce will do is it will say, okay, we'll take the first element. So ours is going to be the array of arrays. Here, let's leave that console log in there so we can look at that. So this is going to be our first element. And so that's what the default will be, is the first element. We'll skip that iteration and start with the second one. So we'll have banana good, and then apple better is that this on the first time around. Now, sometimes this is desirable and sometimes it's not. And so normally I don't really like this behavior. I think it's a little surprising. So I like to initialize my reducer with this object, or with the array, or whatever it is that I want to have at the end. So you can use reduce to like add up an array of numbers, or to like really do pretty much anything. And so I normally like to initialize it to what it would be like if there were no items in the array. So if there were no items in the fruit, then I want to reduce this down to an empty object. And so that's what I initialize it to. So good fruit is going to be an empty object on the first time around. And I'll just say if the quality is good, then we'll take good fruit. And at the fruit name will equal the quality. We could actually, here, we'll leave that with where it is. But the errors that we're getting here are because we're not returning what the next good fruit value should be. So this is, when we saw that documentation for this method, it said the previous value is what it called it. And you set the previous value every time you go through this reduce by returning a value. So we're going to return good fruit. But we could return anything. Like it really, like this is a pretty common way to do things. You like create a value, you make changes to it, you return that same value. Or maybe we could even say like make an entirely new object and have fruit name is the quality. So that would also work. Oops. And so let's assign this. We'll say good stuff, and then we'll console log good stuff. We can see what the result is. It's this object that has, oh, see, now we lost our condition. Boo. Okay, let's add that condition back in. So we'll say if the quality is good, then let's just go back to what we had before. It really like doesn't matter a whole lot. Or good fruit at fruit name equals quality, and return good fruit. Okay, there we go. So with that, fruit name is not defined. Yeah, I don't know how to spell. Okay, cool. So now we just have an object of the good fruit. So we took this fruit object and reduced it down to an object that only has the good stuff. Now there's apple, which is better, but you know, what do you do? So in this case, like it doesn't actually make sense to have an object where all the properties are the same. So like maybe there could be a scenario where you want to take an object and turn that into an array. And so that's simple enough. You change this from your initial value from an object to an array. And then instead of assigning these values like this, you could just say push fruit name. And now we get this array of just the good fruit. So yeah, lots of different things. We could even have like a sum. So we could take this and sum up those the fruit that are good. And so we'll say yeah, return good fruit, and that would be like good fruit count plus 1. And yeah, and then we get 2 as a result. So yeah, lots of different things that you can do with reduce. You don't have to start out with an array. You can use something like object entries. There's also object values. So we could actually accomplish this like that. So we could accomplish the same thing using object values. And then for a long time we've had object keys, and then we could do something else with the keys. So yeah, anyway, hopefully that's helpful. I find reduce to be really helpful. I use it like pretty much every day for tons and tons of things. If you find yourself using for loop, often I will find that using a reduce function makes things a little bit more clear what's going on. I don't like the imperativeness of a for loop. If you find yourself doing like a filter and a map, you can actually do all of that in a reduce. We could convert this to a filter and map. We say filter, and then we put our this filter in here, say quality, and then we can map, or actually you can't really reduce this, but if we wanted to just filter the fruit that is good and turned it into an array like we had before, Oh, see, then we messed that up. So let's do entries, and we'll take the key would be the fruit name and quality. There we go. And then we could map this to fruit name, and oh, that needs to be in parentheses. There we go. And then we can, so you can use map, filter, reduce. If you see a filter and a map, you could actually just do that with a single reduce. Sometimes it's more clear what's going on, and sometimes it's like, I don't know, I honestly don't really care a whole lot whether you use filter with a map or if you use reduce. Sometimes I find it to read a little easier if it's a filter and a map like this, whereas with reduce, your reduce callback can be a little bit like imperative. And so, yeah, I don't really care a whole lot, but those are a couple examples. I hope that's helpful. And yeah, I'll see you all next time. Bye.